The billionaire CEO insulted her in German, confident the poor waitress couldn't understand his cruel words. When Anna Bergman responded in flawless German and mentioned her father's name, Klaus Richter went pale. Some secrets were supposed to stay buried forever. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Some moments arrive with the quiet inevitability of a storm cloud gathering on the horizon. You see it coming, you feel the shift in the air, but you're powerless to stop what followed. For Anna Bergman, that moment walked through the gilded doors of Le Chateau Noir at precisely 7:30 on a Friday evening, dressed in a $10,000 suit and radiating the kind of arrogance that only comes from never having heard the word no. For Klaus Richter, CEO of Richter International and a man who measured his worth in quarterly earnings and the deference of others, it was just another evening at his favorite restaurant, another opportunity to remind the world of his place in it. He didn't know that the young woman in the crisp white shirt and elegant black apron would become the earthquake that shattered his carefully constructed fortress of superiority. This isn't a story about a chance encounter. This is a story about how the sins of the past have a way of finding you. Even in the most unlikely places, spoken in a language you thought would always be your private weapon. The crystal chandeliers of Le Chateau Noir cast pools of honeyed light across the dining room, each prism catching and refracting the glow into 1,000 tiny rainbows that danced across white linen tablecloth. The restaurant was a temple to old-world elegance, where every detail from the antique silverware to the hand-painted porcelain spoke of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The kind of place where a single meal could cost more than most people earned in a week, where the waitstaff moved with the precision of ballet dancers and the sommelier could discourse for 20 minutes on the terroir of a particular vineyard. Anna Bergman had worked at Le Chateau Noir for 3 months, and every shift felt like walking a tightrope over an abyss. 26 years old, a literature graduate from a state university who spoke 4 languages fluently and had once dreamed of being a translator for the United Nations. Instead, she balanced plates on her forearm and smiled through the casual condescension of people who saw her uniform but never her face. The pay was better than any other restaurant in the city, and she needed every cent. Her younger brother Max was in his 2nd year of medical school, and their mother's small pension barely covered her own expenses, let alone his tuition. Anna had made a promise to her late father that Max would finish his education, no matter what it took. So she swallowed her pride, memorized the French names of dishes she couldn't afford to taste, and became invisible in the way that good service required. Tonight, the restaurant hummed with its usual Friday energy. The tables were full of couples celebrating anniversaries, business associates sealing deals over Chateaubriand, and the occasional celebrity trying and failing to dine anonymously. Anna moved through her section with practiced efficiency, her notepad tucked into the pocket of her apron, her smile professional but warm. She had learned early on that the key to good tips was reading people, understanding what they needed before they asked. Some wanted conversation, others wanted to be left alone. Some wanted to feel important, others wanted authenticity. She had become a chameleon, reflecting back whatever would make her customers comfortable and keep them generous. She was refilling water glasses at table 7 when she felt the shift in the room's energy. That subtle change that happened when someone truly powerful entered a space. The maître d', Philip, a man whose poker face was legendary, actually straightened his spine and smoothed his already perfect jacket. Anna followed his gaze to the entrance where 3 men had just arrived. 2 of them were clearly security, their eyes scanning the room with professional detachment despite their expensive suits. But it was the man between them who commanded attention. Klaus Richter was in his early 50s, tall and imposing with iron gray hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by a sculptor who specialized in severity. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders, and his shoes gleamed with the kind of shine that spoke of staff whose entire job was probably shoemate. But it wasn't his clothes or his bearing that made the room take notice. It was the absolute certainty in every movement, the way he walked as if the ground itself was honored to support him. This was a man who had never questioned his right to be wherever he was, doing whatever he pleased. Philippe glided forward with the kind of deference usually reserved for royalty. Anna watched as he led Richter and his companions to the best table in the house. It's a corner booth beneath the largest chandelier with a view of both the dining room and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city's skyline. It was table 12, and it was in her section. Anna felt her stomach tighten. She recognized Richter from the business section of newspapers, from the occasional news broadcast when his company made headlines for another massive acquisition or controversial decision. Richter International owned everything from luxury hotels to media conglomerates, and Klaus Richter himself was known for being ruthless in business and impossible to please in person. She took a deep breath and reminded herself of Max's tuition bills sitting on her tiny apartment's kitchen table. She checked her reflection in the polished surface of a serving cart, smoothed her hair back into its neat ponytail, and picked up 3 leather-bound inbound menus. The walk to table 12 felt longer than it should have. As she approached, she could hear Richter speaking to one of his companions in rapid German, his voice clipped and authoritative. She caught fragments of the conversation, something about quarterly projections and disappointing performance metrics. The other men nodded along, one of them pulling out a tablet to take notes. Anna stopped at the edge of the table and waited for a natural pause in the conversation. When none came after 30 seconds, she cleared her throat gently. Richter's eyes flicked to her, a dismissive glance that lasted less than a second before returning to his companion. He continued speaking in German as if she weren't there. Anna waited another 30 seconds, her professional smile fixed in place, her arms beginning to ache from holding the heavy menu. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Richter held up one hand to silence his companions and turned to look at her fully. "Good evening," Anna began, her voice warm and clear. "Welcome to Le Chateau Noir. My name is Anna, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. Our specials tonight include a pan-seared Dover sole with a champagne butter sauce and a dry-aged ribeye with truffle palms. Anna, may I start you gentlemen with something from our wine list? Or perhaps an aperitif?" Richter stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, without warning, he turned back to the man on his left and began speaking in rapid German again. Anna felt heat rise in her cheeks. She understood every word he was saying, and the words were not kind. "Did you see that? Look at her face, so eager, like a puppy waiting for a treat. These people are all the same. No ambition, no intelligence, just going through the motions for their pathetic tips." Probably can't even pronounce half the dishes on the menu properly. "I should order something complicated just to watch her fumble through it." The two other men chuckled, not quite meeting Anna's eyes. They clearly understood what their boss was saying and were uncomfortable with it, but not uncomfortable enough to object. This was the dynamic of power, Anna realized. These men probably had advanced degrees and earned six-figure salaries, but in Richter's presence they were as invisible as she was. Complicit in his cruelty because their mortgages and their children's private school tuitions depended on his favor. Anna stood perfectly still, her expression never wavering from its professional pleasantness. Inside, she felt the familiar burn of humiliation mixing with anger. She had dealt with difficult customers before, with entitled people who treated service staff like furniture or performing animals. But there was something particularly cutting about being mocked in a language the mocker assumed you couldn't understand. It was a violation that went beyond simple rudeness. It was a statement that you weren't even worth the effort of discretion. For 3 months, she had swallowed insults, smiled through condescension, and reminded herself that this was temporary, that every shift brought her closer to Max's degree and a better future for both of them. But standing there listening to Klaus Richter describe her as a puppy, as someone with no ambition or intelligence, something inside her cracked. It wasn't a loud break, not an explosion, but a quiet fracture. The kind that starts small and spreads through the entire structure until nothing can support its own weight anymore. She took a breath and made a decision that would change everything. When Richter finally turned back to her, clearly expecting her to still be standing there with her eager puppy face waiting for his order, Anna met his eyes directly. In flawless German, with a slight Bavarian accent that spoke of native fluency rather than classroom learning, she said, "Guten Abend, mein Herren. Es tut mir leid, dass Sie den Eindruck haben. Ich war nicht intelligent genug, ihr Bestellung aufzunehmen. Ich versuche Ihnen. Ich bin durchaus in der Lage, selbst die Komplizier. Testen gerecht unser Kart korrekt aussprechen. Darf ich Ihnen vielleicht unser Degustations, Manong empfehlen. Es Spartans uns beiden die Mood, weiter Missverständnis." Good evening, gentlemen. I apologize that you have the impression I'm not intelligent enough to take your order. I assure you, I'm quite capable of correctly pronouncing even the most complicated dishes on our menu. May I perhaps recommend our tasting menu? It would save us both the trouble of further misunderstanding. The effect was instantaneous and total. Klaus Richter's face went through a progression of emotions so rapid it was almost comical. Shock, followed by recognition of what had just happened, followed by a flush of embarrassment that crept up from his collar, followed by something harder and colder. His two companions suddenly found their napkins fascinating. The nearby tables, sensing drama, had gone quiet, their conversations trailing off into attentive silence. Richter recovered quickly. She had to give him that. His expression smoothed into something approximating amusement, though his eyes remained cold. "So," he said in German, "you speak our language. How enterprising. I suppose you expect me to apologize now?" Anna kept her voice level and professional, still speaking in German. "I expect nothing, sir. I'm simply here to provide you with excellent service, regardless of your opinion of my intelligence or ambition. Now, shall I give you a few moments to review the menu, or would you like to hear more about tonight's specials?" The silence stretched between them, taut as a violin string. Anna could feel the eyes of the entire dining room on them. Though most of the diners probably couldn't understand what was being said, they could only sense the tension, the way the air had thickened with an unnamed conflict. Philippe hovered near the bar, his expression concerned, clearly wondering if he needed to intervene. Anna knew she was taking an enormous risk. Richter could complain to management, demand she be fired, make a scene that would end her employment immediately, but something in her refused to back down. Refused to let this moment pass without consequence. For too long she had made herself small, had accepted treatment she didn't deserve because she needed the money. because she had responsibilities that outweighed her pride. But there was a limit to how much a person could diminish themselves, and Anna had just discovered where hers was. It was here, in this beautiful restaurant under these glittering chandeliers, facing a man who thought his money gave him the right to mock people who served him. Richter's eyes narrowed, studying her with new interest as if seeing her for the first time. There was calculation in his gaze now, not just dismissal. "You speak excellent German," he said finally. "Where did you learn?" "My father was German," Anna replied, her voice steady. "We spoke it at home." Richter leaned back in his chair, his posture suggesting he had all the time in the world, though Anna could see the tension in his jaw. "Your father was German," he repeated as if testing the weight of the information. "And what did your father do?" Anna felt the familiar ache that always came when speaking of her father, but she kept her voice neutral. "He was a professor of linguistics at the university. He passed away 2 years ago." She didn't elaborate, didn't mention the sudden heart attack that had taken him at 58, didn't speak of the modest funeral they could barely afford or the discovery afterward that he'd been quietly paying for Max's first year of medical school with money he didn't have, running up credit card debt to fulfill his dream of seeing his son become a doctor. "A professor," Richter said, and there was something new in his voice now, a note she couldn't quite identify. Not mockery exactly, but not respect either, something more complicated. "So you're educated then? Why are you here serving tables instead of using that expensive education your father presumably provided?" The question was designed to wound, and it did. Anna felt the barb sink in, felt the implied judgment that she had somehow wasted her father's sacrifice, that she had failed to live up to the potential of her upbringing. It was a question that assumed failure was a choice, that anyone working in service must have made some fundamental error in judgment or character. It was the question of someone who had never known what it meant to choose between your own dreams and your family's survival. "Because I made a promise," Anna said quietly, and something in her tone made even Richter pause. "My brother is in medical school. Someone has to pay for it." She shifted the menus slightly in her hands, a small gesture that brought them back to the present moment, to the transaction they were supposed to be having. "Now, gentlemen, may I take your order, or shall I return in a few minutes?" One of Richter's companions, the younger one with nervous eyes, cleared his throat. "I'll have the Dover sole," he said quickly in German, as if eager to move past the tension, "and a glass of the Chablis." Richter held up one hand, silencing the man. His eyes never left Anna's face. "Tell me," he said, still speaking German, "what would you recommend? You've worked here 3 months, you said. Surely you've tried the food, formed opinion. It's actually worth eating in this overpriced establishment." It was another test, Anna realized. He was probing, trying to see if she would maintain her composure or if he could still rattle her. She met his gaze steadily. "The kitchen does an exceptional cassoulet on Wednesdays," she said. "It's not on the menu, but Chef Marcel makes it for staff occasionally. It's the best thing in the restaurant. Nothing fancy, nothing that will impress your business associates, but it's honest food made with skill and care. For you tonight, though, I'd recommend the duck confit. It's rich, complicated, and just difficult enough to eat elegantly that it will remind you that some things require attention and respect, even when you think you're above them." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient noise of the dining room seemed to have been swallowed by the weight of what Anna had just said. She had crossed a line, she knew. There was professional candor, and then there was insubordination, and she had just pole vaulted over that boundary. Philippe would fire her before the night was out. The realization was strangely liberating. Richter's face had gone very still. For a moment, Anna thought he might explode, might stand up and demand to speak to the manager, might unleash the full force of his considerable power to destroy this moment and everyone in it. But instead, something unexpected happened. The corners of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close enough that his companions exchanged bewildered glances. "Duck confit it is," he said slowly. "And bring me a bottle of the 2015 Burgundy, the Gevry Chambert. If I'm going to be reminded of humility, I might as well enjoy the experience." He closed his menu and handed it to her, his fingers brushing hers for just a moment. She felt the coldness of his skin, saw up close the fine lines around his eyes that spoke of late nights and stress. For just an instant, he looked less like an untouchable titan and more like a man carrying weight he couldn't set down. Anna took the menus from all 3 men and turned to go, her heart hammering so hard she was certain they could hear it. She made it 3 steps before Richter's voice stopped her. "Fräulein Bergman," he called out, and she froze. She hadn't told him her last name. She turned back slowly. He was looking at her with an expression she couldn't read, something between curiosity and calculation. "Your father, Professor Bergman. What was his first name?" "Martin," Anna said, confusion flickering across her face. "Martin Bergman, why?" Richter didn't answer immediately. He seemed to be processing something, some connection clicking into place behind his eyes. Finally, he said, "No reason, just curious." His tone was dismissive, but Anna could see she had unsettled him somehow, though she had no idea why. "Bring us the wine first," he added. "I find myself in need of it." Anna nodded and walked away, her mind racing. How had he known her last name? Had Philippa told him? Was Richter the type to demand information about staff who caught his attention? As she approached the bar to place the wine order, Philippe materialized beside her, his usually impassive face tight with concern. "Anna," What happened there? He asked in a low voice. Monsieur Richter looked distinctly uncomfortable, which is not a state I have ever witnessed in 5 years of serving him. I spoke German, Anna said simply. He didn't know I could understand what he was saying about me. Felipe's eyes widened. Mon Dieu. What did he say? Nothing I haven't heard before, Anna replied, though the words felt heavy. She glanced back at table 12, where Richter was deep in conversation with his companions, their heads bent close together. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language suggested urgency, even alarm. What worried her more than anything was the look Richter had given her when she'd said her father's name. It was the look of someone who'd just seen a ghost. The sommelier appeared with the burgundy, and Anna carried it to the table with a tray of glasses. She performed the ritual of presenting the bottle to Richter, who waved away the tasting perfunctorily. Just pour, he said in German, and for once his tone held no condescension. Anna filled all 3 glasses and was about to retreat when Richter spoke again. Your father, Professor Martin Bergman, did he teach at Friedrich Wilhelm University? Anna's hand stilled on the bottle. Yes, she said slowly, for 20 years. How did you know that? Richter took a long drink of his wine, his expression distant. Because I knew him, he said quietly. Not well, but I knew him. He consulted for my company once many years ago. A translation project, something sensitive involving international contracts. He was brilliant, but impossible to work with. He refused to translate certain clauses the way we wanted them worded. Said it would be dishonest, misleading. We had to let him go. The world seemed to tilt slightly under Anna's feet. Her father had never mentioned working for Richter International. In fact, she couldn't remember him ever speaking about corporate consulting work at all. He had been a pure academic, devoted to his research and his students, dismissive of what he called the prostitution of knowledge for profit. The idea that he had worked for Richter's company, even briefly, felt wrong somehow. When was this? She asked, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Richter thought for a moment. 2008, perhaps 2009, the financial crisis era? We were expanding into Eastern Europe and needed someone fluent in German, Russian, and Czech who understood legal terminology. Your father was recommended by someone at the university. He worked for us for maybe 3 weeks before he walked out in the middle of a meeting, called me a robber baron, and said he wouldn't help me steal from desperate people. Richter's tone was matter-of-fact, but there was something else underneath it, a note of old irritation mixed with what might have been respect. He was probably right to walk away. That deal was profitable, but it wasn't pretty. Anna felt as if she were standing on sand that was shifting beneath her feet. This was exactly the kind of story her father would have told her, would have used as a teaching moment about integrity and standing up for principles, but he had never mentioned it. Why? What had he been protecting her from, or what had he been ashamed of? He needed the money, Anna heard herself say. 2009 was when my mother's cancer treatment started. He must have been desperate to even take the job. Richter's expression shifted, something human breaking through the corporate armor. Didn't know that, he said quietly. We paid him for the full project even though he left. I'm not entirely heartless despite what you might think. He paused, then added, he was a man of principle. Father, that's rare. Inconvenient, but rare. Anna didn't know what to say. The man sitting before her was the same person who had mocked her minutes ago, who had called her unintelligent and unambitious, who radiated the kind of casual cruelty that came from too much power and too little consequence. But he was also someone who had known her father, who had witnessed the same stubborn integrity that had defined Martin Bergman's life. It was disorienting, this sudden humanization of someone she had been prepared to hate. I'll put your order in, she said finally, needing to escape the weight of the conversation. The duck can feed for you, the soul for your colleague, and she turned to the third man who had been sitting in uncomfortable silence throughout the entire exchange. The chicken, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Just the chicken. Anna nodded and walked away, feeling Richter's eyes on her back until she disappeared through the kitchen doors. She leaned against the cool stainless steel wall and took several deep breaths. Her hands were shaking. The professional mask she had worn so carefully for 3 months had cracked, and she didn't know if she could put it back together. More than that, she didn't know if she wanted to. The kitchen of Le Chateau Noir was a controlled chaos of heat and precision. Chef Marcel ruled his domain with the temperament of an artist and the discipline of a general, and his staff moved through the space with choreographed efficiency. Anna stood at the server station, entering the order into the computer system, her fingers moving automatically while her mind replayed the conversation at table 12. Martin Bergman had worked for Richter International. Her father, who had preached about the corruption of academia by corporate interests, who had refused consulting offers from pharmaceutical companies and tech firms because he believed knowledge should serve humanity, not profit margins, had taken money from Klaus Richter. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Anna wanted to believe there was more to the story, some explanation that would reconcile the father she knew with this hidden chapter of his life, but the timeline made sickening sense. 2009 was the year everything had started to fall apart. Her mother Helene's breast cancer diagnosis, the mounting medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover, the quiet desperation that had settled over their household like fog. Martin had taken on extra students, taught summer courses, but it was never enough. He must have swallowed his principles and accepted Richter's offer out of sheer necessity. And then he'd walked away from it, unable to stomach whatever he'd been asked to do, losing the money they desperately needed because his conscience wouldn't allow him to participate in something he considered theft. Anna felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes and blinked them back angrily. She couldn't afford to fall apart, not here. Not now. She had tables to serve, bills to pay, a brother depending on her. The luxury of processing her emotions would have to wait. She picked up the order ticket as it printed and clipped it to the line, then grabbed a basket of warm bread and headed back out to the dining room. Table 12 was quieter when she returned. The three men sat in tense silence. Richter staring out the window at the city lights below, his wine glass already half empty. Anna refilled it without being asked, then set the breadbasket down with practiced grace. The other two men thanked her in German, but Richter didn't acknowledge her presence. He seemed lost in thought, his jaw working as if he were having an internal argument with himself. As Anna turned to leave, Richter spoke without looking at her. "Did your father ever talk about that time? About working for my company?" Anna hesitated, professional protocol warring with honesty. "No," she said finally. "He never mentioned it. I only learned about it 5 minutes ago." Richter nodded slowly as if this confirmed something he'd suspected. "He was protecting you," he said. "From what, I'm not entirely sure, but Martin Bergman was the type of man who would carry his own burdens rather than share them. I respected that about him, even when infuriating." "With respect, Herr Richter," Anna said, her voice tight with emotion she could barely contain. "You don't get to speak about what my father would or wouldn't do. You knew him for 3 weeks, 15 years ago. I knew him my entire life." Richter finally looked at her, and there was something in his expression that might have been regret. "You're right, of course, I apologize. That was presumptuous of me." He paused, then added, "But I do know that he walked away from 100,000 euros rather than compromise his principles." "How many people can you say that about?" The figure hit Anna like a physical blow. 100,000 euros. In 2009, that would have been transformative for her family. It would have covered her mother's treatments, would have kept them from losing their house, would have meant her father didn't have to work himself into an early grave taking on extra courses and tutoring sessions. He had walked away from their salvation because of his moral code. The realization was both heartbreaking and infuriating. Before Anna could respond, one of Richter's companions spoke up nervously. "Klaus, perhaps this isn't the appropriate venue for this discussion. We have matters to discuss. The board meeting on Monday." Richter waved him off impatiently. "The board meeting can wait, Friedrich. This is more important." He looked back at Anna, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made her uncomfortable. "Your father left because I asked him to mistranslate a contract. It was a property acquisition in Prague, a building that housed elderly tenants on fixed incomes. The original Czech contract had protections for the tenants built in, guarantees that their rent wouldn't increase beyond a certain percentage, that they couldn't be evicted without cause. I wanted those protections made ambiguous in the German version. Wanted wiggle room so we could clear the building and convert it to luxury apartments. Your father refused, said he wouldn't help me steal people's homes. We argued. He called me a vulture in a suit, and then he walked out." The confession hung in the air between them. Anna could feel the eyes of Richter's companions on them, could sense their discomfort at this public unburdening. She didn't understand why Richter was telling her this. Why now? Why here? It felt like a strange sort of penance, as if by admitting his sins to the daughter of the man who had condemned him, he could somehow absolve himself. "So you did it anyway," Anna said quietly. "You found someone else to mistranslate the contract and you evicted those people." "Yes," Richter said simply. "The building is now the Richter Residences Prague. Luxury apartments starting at 3 million euros. Very profitable. Also exactly what your father predicted it would be. Theft dressed up as business." He took another drink of wine, finishing the glass. "I think about that project sometimes more than any of the others. Not because it haunts me, I'm not that sentimental, but because your father was the last person who had the courage to tell me to my face that what I was doing was wrong. After him, everyone either agreed with me or kept their objections to themselves. I've been surrounded by yes-men and cowards ever since." Anna felt a strange mixture of pride and sorrow washing over her. Pride that her father had stood his ground, that he had maintained his integrity even when it cost him everything. Sorrow that his stand had changed nothing, that Richter had simply found someone else to do his dirty work. Her father had sacrificed so much for a principle, and the world had gone on unchanged by his sacrifice. "Did you pay him?" she asked. "You said you paid him for the full project even though he left." "I did," Richter confirmed. "Refused it at first, sent the check back. So I had my accountant set up a scholarship at the university in his name. Funneled the money there. I thought perhaps he'd accept it if it helped students." He paused, then added, "He accepted it, but he never thanked me. I suspect he knew exactly what I was doing and considered it blood money being laundered into something useful. The scholarship," Anna remembered it now, suddenly and vividly. The Professor Martin Bergman Scholarship for students studying translation and interpretation with a focus on ethics. Her father had been so proud of it, had talked about it as if it were his greatest achievement. He had told them it was funded by an anonymous donor who believed in his work. Anna had attended the award ceremony every year, had watched her father's face light up as he handed checks to grateful students. She had never known the money came from Richter, had never suspected the complicated history behind it. "He used it well," Anna said softly. "That scholarship has helped dozens of students. Some of them have gone on to work for human rights organizations, for refugee assistance programs. They're doing the kind of work he believed in." "Good," Richter said, and for once there was no sarcasm or coldness in his voice. "Then perhaps some good came from that mess after all." He looked at her seriously. "I'm not telling you this to ease my conscience, Fräulein Bergman. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth about why your father walked away from that money. He didn't fail you or your family. He made a choice based on his values, and that choice had consequences he was willing to accept. Most people don't have that kind of strength. Anna felt tears threatening again and blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry in front of this man, wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how deeply his words had affected her. Instead, she straightened her spine and summoned every bit of her professional training. "Your food should be ready shortly," she said, her voice only slightly unsteady. "Is there anything else I can bring you while you wait?" Richter studied her for a long moment, and Anna had the unsettling feeling that he could see through her composure to the turmoil beneath. "Actually, yes," he said. "When you bring our meals, bring yourself a chair. I'd like you to join us." "Herr Richter," Anna began. "That's really not appropriate. I'm working, and Felipe would never allow it." "I own 40% of this restaurant," Richter said flatly. "Felipe will allow whatever I tell him to allow. Sit with us for your break. 15 minutes. I have something I need to discuss with you, something about your father that you need to hear." Anna wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away from this man and this conversation and everything it was stirring up inside her. But curiosity won out over caution. What else could he possibly tell her? What other secrets had her father kept? "Very well," she said, "when I bring your meals, but only for 15 minutes. I have other tables to attend." "Of course," Richter said. 15 minutes, that's all I need." His expression was unreadable, but Anna caught something in his eyes that looked almost like regret. 20 minutes later, Anna carried 3 plates to table 12 on a large tray. The weight of the food, nothing compared to the weight of what was coming. She'd spent those 20 minutes in a state of anxious anticipation, moving through her other tables on autopilot, her mind racing with possibilities. What could Richter possibly want to discuss? What else could there be to say about a 3-week consulting job from 15 years ago? Part of her wanted to simply refuse, finish her shift and go home to her cramped apartment where she could process everything in private. But a larger part of her, the part that was Martin Bergman's daughter, needed to know the truth, whatever it was. She set the plates down with practiced precision. The duck confit for Richter, glistening with rendered fat and herbs. The Dover sole for Friedrich, perfectly deboned and swimming in champagne butter, and the roasted chicken for the third man whose name she still didn't know. They thanked her in a murmur of voices and she nodded acknowledgement. Philippe appeared at her elbow as if summoned by telepathy, which in a way he had been. Richter had clearly signaled him during her absence. "Mademoiselle Bergman," Philippe said in his smooth, accentless French, "please take your break now. I will cover your section." Anna shot him a look that she hoped conveyed her confusion and concern, but Philippe's face remained professionally neutral. She had no choice but to comply. She untied her apron, folded it carefully, and turned to find that Richter's companion Friedrich had already vacated his seat and moved to sit next to his colleague, leaving an empty chair directly across from Richter. Anna sat down feeling exposed without her apron, without the armor of her professional role. She was just herself now, just Anna Bergman, and the man across from her was looking at her with an intensity that made her deeply uncomfortable. For a moment they sat in silence while Richter cut into his duck with surgical precision. He took a bite, chewed thoughtfully, and nodded. "You were right," he said. "This is excellent. Difficult to eat elegantly, though." He looked up at her with the ghost of a smile. "I'm getting fat on my tie." Anna couldn't help but notice that he was indeed being very careful with his eating, his movements more controlled than they had been earlier in the evening. Despite herself, she felt a flicker of amusement. Perhaps that was intentional, she said. A reminder that even the most powerful people are human. Richter set down his knife and fork and leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You're very much your father's daughter, aren't you? That same way of speaking truth without cruelty, just stating facts and letting them land where they will. Martin had that gift. It made him dangerous." "Dangerous," Anna repeated. "That's an interesting word choice for a linguistics professor." "Dangerous to people like me," Richter clarified. "People who prefer comfortable lies to uncomfortable truths. Your father had a way of cutting through all the sophisticated justifications we build around our actions and exposing them for what they really are. When he called me a robber baron, he wasn't being dramatic. He was being accurate, and I hated him for it because I couldn't argue with him." Anna folded her hands in her lap, trying to project calm even though her heart was racing. "Here, Richter, you said you had something important to tell me about my father. I'm here. Please just say it." Richter nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "Very well. Direct, like Martin." He took a breath, and Anna could see him choosing his words carefully. "When your father walked out on me in 2009, he didn't just walk out. He took something with him. Documents, contracts, emails, evidence of not just the Prague deal, but several other questionable transactions my company was involved in. He made copies before he left." Anna felt her stomach drop. Her father had stolen corporate documents. The man who had taught her that integrity meant following rules even when they were inconvenient. Who had made her return a library book she'd accidentally kept past its due date even though the library had closed and it meant a 20-minute walk in the rain. That man had committed corporate espionage. "I don't believe you," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I didn't believe it either at first," Richter said, "but my head of security confirmed it. Your father was meticulous. He documented everything. And then he did something I've never been able to fully understand. He didn't go to the authorities, didn't leak the documents to the press. He sent me a letter." Richter reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. He handed it across the table to Anna. She hesitated, then took it. The paper was thin, the creases deep from years of being folded and unfolded. Anna opened it carefully and recognized her father's handwriting immediately. That precise, elegant script that had graded thousands of student papers. The letter was in German, dated November 2009. Herr Richter, it began, I have in my possession documentation of business practices that I believe are not only unethical but potentially criminal. I have made copies of everything. You might think I intend to destroy you with this information to go to the authorities or the media, but I am not interested in destruction. I am interested in accountability. I am giving you 1 year to make things right. Return the Prague building to the tenants with fair leases. Compensate the other people you've harmed in the deals documented in these files. Do this, and the documents remain private. Fail to do this, and I will ensure they reach the proper authorities. This is not blackmail, as I am asking for nothing for myself. This is a demand for justice. You have 1 year. The letter was signed simply, Professor Martin Bergman. Anna read the letter twice, her hands trembling. Her father had blackmailed Klaus Richter. Or no, not blackmailed, he'd been very clear about that. He had given Richter an ultimatum, make amends or face consequence. It was so perfectly impossibly her father. This belief that people could be appealed to on moral ground, that given the choice between doing right and being exposed for doing wrong, they would choose righteousness. Did you do it? Anna asked, looking up from the letter. Did you return the building, compensate the others? Some of it, Richter said. Not all. The Prague building was too far gone. We'd already begun renovations, the tenants were relocated legally if not ethically, but I did provide them with compensation packages far beyond what the law required. And for the other situations, yes, I made amends where I could. It cost my company millions, and I had to be very creative in how I structured it to avoid admitting wrongdoing publicly. He paused, then added, but I didn't do it out of the goodness of my heart, Fräulein Bergman. I did it because your father scared me. He was a man with nothing to lose and everything to gain by destroying me. And yet he chose to give me a chance instead. That kind of moral authority is rare. Ignoring it seemed foolish. Anna set the letter down on the table, her mind reeling. So my father was holding this over you all these years. Where are the documents now? Richter shook his head. I don't know. I assumed they were in his possession, that he'd destroy them after he felt I'd done enough. But after he died, I waited for them to surface. When your mother sold your family home last year, I thought perhaps they'd be found then, that you or your brother would discover them. But nothing. Either he destroyed them himself or they're hidden somewhere. I haven't been able to find them. Anna thought about the boxes of her father's papers that she and Max had sorted through after the house was sold. Boxes and boxes of lecture notes, student papers, research materials. They had donated most of it to the university archive, had kept only the personal item. Could those documents have been among the papers they'd given away? The thought was unsettling. Why are you telling me this now? Anna asked. After all these years, why now? Because I need to know if you have them, Richter said bluntly. And because I think you deserve to know the truth about your father. He wasn't just a principled academic. He was a man who was willing to play hardball when it mattered, who understood that sometimes righteousness requires leverage. He paused, then looked at her directly. The documents he took included not just evidence of my wrongdoing, but evidence of wrongdoing by several other companies, some of them much larger and more powerful than mine. If those documents still exist, and if they fall into the wrong hands or even the right hands, they could cause significant damage or significant justice, Anna said coldly. Depending on your perspective. Fair point, Richter conceded. But consider this. Your father had those documents for years. It could have leaked them at any time, could have brought down not just me, but an entire network of corrupt business practices. He chose not to. Why? I've spent a long time thinking about this, and I believe it's because he understood that wholesale destruction isn't always the same as justice. He wanted accountability, not chaos. Anna leaned forward, her voice sharp with anger. Don't you dare try to make my father's mercy sound like complicity. He gave you a chance to do better, and apparently you took it. At least partially. That doesn't mean he approved of you or that he would want me to protect you now. I'm not asking you to protect me, Richter said. I'm asking you to consider what your father's intentions were. If he wanted those documents public, they would be public. He chose a different path. Maybe you should honor that choice. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip. Besides, it's been 15 years. Most of the statute of limitations have expired. The documents are more dangerous now as blackmail material than as evidence. Anna felt a cold chill run down her spine. That's what this is really about, isn't it? You're worried someone will try to blackmail you. You're worried I will. The thought hadn't even occurred to me until you said it, Richter said with a slight smile. But now that you mention it, are you planning to blackmail me, Fräulein Bergman? Anna stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This conversation is over. I don't have your documents, Herr Richter. I don't know where they are, and if I did find them, I would do exactly what my father should have done in the first place. I'd take them to the authorities and let them decide what justice looks like. She turned to walk away, then paused and looked back at him. My father gave you more grace than you deserved. Don't mistake that for weakness. Richter watched her go, his expression unreadable. As Anna disappeared into the kitchen, Friedrich leaned over and spoke quietly. That went well, he said dryly. Anna made it to the staff restroom before the tears came. She locked herself in a stall and pressed her hands against her face, trying to muffle the sounds of her crying. Everything she thought she knew about her father was being systematically dismantled. Martin Bergman had worked for the kind of company he despised, had stolen corporate documents, had engaged in what amounted to sophisticated coercion of a powerful CEO. These weren't the actions of the gentle academic who had read her bedtime. stories in 3 languages, and taught her that honesty was the highest virtue. But even as she cried, part of her understood. Her father had been desperate, trapped between his principles and his family's survival. He'd taken Richter's money out of necessity, then walked away when asked to compromise his ethics. But he hadn't just walked away empty-handed. He'd taken insurance, evidence, leverage. He'd given Richter a chance to do better while keeping the power to destroy him if he refused. Brilliant and terrible in equal measure. Anna splashed cold water on her face and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red, her carefully applied makeup smudged. She looked exhausted, which was appropriate because she felt like she'd been awake for 1,000 years. The woman in the mirror was a stranger, someone who had just discovered that her entire family history was more complicated than she'd ever imagined. She cleaned herself up as best she could and returned to the dining room. The rest of her shift passed in a blur of mechanical motions. She served food, refilled drinks, cleared plates, and smiled at customers who barely saw her. Table 12 finished their meal and left without incident. Richter dropped a €1,000 tip, which Anna wanted to refuse but couldn't afford to. Felipe raised his eyebrows when he saw the amount but said nothing. When her shift ended at midnight, Anna retrieved her coat and stepped out into the cool night air. The city was still alive with the sounds of traffic and late-night revelers, but the street in front of the restaurant was relatively quiet. She was halfway to the metro station when she heard footsteps behind her, quick and purposeful. She turned to find Friedrich, Richter's nervous companion, hurrying toward her. "It's Fräulein Bergman. Wait, please," he called out, slightly out of breath. Anna stopped, her hand instinctively tightening around her purse. Friedrich caught up to her, his face flushed in the streetlight. "Sorry to bother you, but Herr Richter asked me to give you this." He held out a business card and a thick envelope. Anna took the card but not the envelope. "What is it?" "Your father's scholarship fund," Friedrich explained. "Herr Richter has been the anonymous donor all these years. That envelope contains this year's contribution, €50,000. He wanted you to have it directly, to use as you see fit, for your brother's medical school, for yourself, whatever you need." Anna stared at the envelope as if it were a live snake. "Blood money," she said quietly. "That's what my father called it, and he was right." Friedrich sighed. "Perhaps, but blood money that's helped 37 students complete their education over the years. Blood money that's allowed them to do good work in the world. Your father understood that money is just a tool. It's what you do with it that matters." Anna looked at the card in her hand. It was simple, expensive cardstock with Richter's name, title, and a phone number, nothing else. No corporate logo, no pretense. "Tell him I don't want his money," she said, trying to hand back the card. Friedrich didn't take it. "He said you'd say that. He also said to tell you that this isn't a payment or a bribe. It's a continuation of an agreement he made with your father 15 years ago. The scholarship was supposed to run for 20 years. We're only at year 15. Your father would want it to continue." The manipulation of it made Anna angry, but she couldn't deny the truth in Friedrich's word. Her father had accepted the scholarship money, had been proud of it, had built something meaningful from Richter's guilt. Who was she to undo that now? She took the envelope, the weight of it heavy in her hand. "I'll give it to the university," she said, "but I want nothing to do with administering it. Let them handle it." "Of course," Friedrich said, relief evident in his voice. "And Fräulein Bergman, one more thing." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was an old picture, faded with age, showing 2 men standing outside a building she didn't recognize. One of them was clearly a younger Klaus Richter, maybe in his early 30s. The other was her father, looking happier and healthier than she'd seen him in years. "When was this taken?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Prague, 2009, Friedrich said, "the day before your father walked out. Herr Richter keeps it in his office. I think he looks at it more than he'd ever admit." He paused, then added, "He's not a good man, Fräulein Bergman. I won't lie to you about that, but your father affected him in ways I don't think even he fully understands. You affected him tonight, too. I've worked for Klaus Richter for 12 years, and I've never seen him look the way he looked at you, like he was seeing a ghost that could absolve him." Anna handed the phone back. "I'm nobody's absolution," she said firmly, "and neither was my father. If Herr Richter feels guilty, that's his burden to carry, not mine to ease." Friedrich nodded and pocketed his phone. "Understood. Have a good evening, Fräulein Bergman." He turned and walked back toward the restaurant, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts and €50,000 in an envelope. She didn't go home. Instead, she found herself walking, the city unfolding around her in the quiet hours of early morning. She ended up at the university, at the building where her father had taught for 20 years. It was locked at this hour, but she stood outside looking up at the dark windows of what had been his office. She remembered visiting him here as a child, remembered the smell of old books and pipe tobacco, remembered sitting in the corner doing homework while he met with students who adored him. Anna pulled out her phone and called Max. It rang 4 times before her brother answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Anna, do you know what time it is?" "I need to ask you something," Anna said without preamble. "When we cleaned out Dad's office after he died, do you remember what we did with all his papers?" Max groaned. "It's 2 in the morning. Can't this wait?" "No," Anna said. "Please, Max, it's important. The papers, the boxes of documents. Where are they?" "We donated most of it to the university archives," Max said, sounding more awake now. "The personal stuff, photos and letters we kept." "Why? What's going on? Did you look through everything before we donated it?" Anna pressed. All of it? Anna, there were like 30 boxes, Max said. I looked through some of it, but honestly, most of it was lecture notes and research papers. Boring academic stuff. The archivist said they'd catalog it all. He paused. What are you looking for? I don't know, Anna admitted. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. She told him about the evening, about Richter, about the documents their father had taken. By the time she finished, Max was fully awake and swearing under his breath. You're telling me Dad was basically blackmailing a billionaire, and we might have donated the evidence to the university library? Max's voice pitched higher with disbelief. He wasn't blackmailing him, Anna said defensively. He was holding him accountable. Anna, I love you, but that's the same thing with better PR, Max said. He took a breath, Okay, let's think about this logically. If Dad had those documents and if they were important enough to hide, would he have just left them in boxes with his lecture notes? No, Anna said slowly. He wouldn't. He'd have hidden them somewhere safer. Somewhere only he knew about. Or maybe he destroyed them before he died. Maybe that's why Richter never found them. But what if he didn't? Max asked. What if they're still out there somewhere and we just don't know where to look? Anna, if those documents are real and if they expose corruption on the scale Richter suggested, they could be worth a fortune to the right people or the wrong people. Anna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. You think someone else might be looking for them? I think if I were Klaus Richter, I'd have had people searching for those documents for 15 years, Max said. And if I were someone who wanted to hurt Klaus Richter, I'd be very interested in finding them too. Anna, you need to be careful. You've put yourself on Richter's radar now. That's dangerous. He doesn't scare me, Anna said, but even as she spoke the words, she knew they weren't entirely true. Maybe he should, Max replied. Look, I have an exam at 8. I need to sleep. But tomorrow we're going to the university archives and we're going to look through every single box of Dad's papers. If those documents are there, we need to find them before someone else does. They said goodnight and Anna ended the call, but she didn't move from her spot outside the building. She thought about her father working in that office, thought about him carrying the weight of those documents and the secrets they contain. Had he been afraid? Had he looked over his shoulder wondering if Richter would send someone after him? Or had he believed in his naive academic way that truth and righteousness would protect him? Anna pulled out Richter's business card and stared at the phone number. On impulse, she dialed it. It rang twice before he answered, his voice alert despite the hour. Fräulein Bergman, I was wondering if you'd call. How did you know it was me? Anna asked. This is my personal line, Richter said. Only a handful of people have this number, and you're the only one who'd call at 2 in the morning. What can I do for you? The documents, Anna said. If I find them, if they're in my father's papers, what would you do? There was a long pause. That depends, Richter said finally. What would you do? I don't know, Anna admitted. Part of me wants to burn them. Part of me wants to take them to every news outlet in the country. And part of me wants to finish what my father started. Wants to use them to make you and everyone like you actually accountable. And which part do you think will win? Richter asked, and there was something in his voice that might have been genuine curiosity. I don't know that either, Anna said, but I know this. My father gave you a chance and you partially took it. But partial isn't good enough. Those documents exist. If I find them, I'm going to use them. Not for money, not for revenge, but for exactly what my father intended, justice. Richter was silent for so long that Anna thought he might have hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, stripped of its usual authority and replaced with something that sounded almost like weariness. Your father said something similar to me once. He told me that justice delayed is justice denied, and that I was denying justice to people who had no power to claim it themselves. I told him he was naive, that the world doesn't work on moral principles. He told me that it should, and that men in my position had a responsibility to make it work that way. We were at an impasse then, and it seems we're at an impasse now. This isn't an impasse, Anna said. This is me telling you what's going to happen if I find those documents. You can prepare for it or not. That's your choice. And if the documents don't exist, Richter asked, if your father destroyed them or if they're lost forever. Oh, what then? Then I suppose you're off the hook, Anna said. But somehow I don't think that's what happened. My father was too careful, too methodical. If he went to the trouble of taking those documents, he kept them somewhere safe, and I'm going to find them. Fräulein Bergman, Richter said, and there was an edge to his voice now. A hint of the steel that had built his empire. I need you to understand something. Those documents don't just implicate me. They implicate people far more powerful and far more dangerous than I am. People who won't respond to moral arguments or ultimatum. People who will do whatever is necessary to protect themselves. If you start looking for those documents, you'll be putting yourself at risk. Is that a threat? Anna asked coldly. No, Richter said. It's a warning. There's a difference. I have no interest in harming you, but I can't speak for others who might learn what you're searching for. Your father understood this risk. That's why he was so careful, why he worked alone. You'd be wise to follow his example. Or, Anna said, I could go public with everything you told me tonight. I could tell the world that you've been worried about these documents for 15 years, that you've been the anonymous donor to my father's scholarship fund as a form of ongoing penance. I'm sure that would make for interesting headlines. You could, Richter agreed. And it would accomplish nothing except to alert everyone who might be implicated that the documents might still exist. You'd be painting a target on your back for no strategic gain. Again, your father was smarter than that. He kept his leverage quiet until he needed to use it. Anna hated that he was right. Every instinct screamed at her to expose him, to make his private guilt public, but Max's warning echoed in her mind. She'd already put herself on Richter's radar. Making more noise would only attract more attention, more danger. I'll be in touch, she said, and ended the call before he could respond. The next morning, Anna and Max met at the university archives at 9 o'clock. The archives were housed in the basement of the main library, a climate-controlled maze of shelves and filing cabinets that smelled of old paper and preservation chemicals. The archivist, a thin woman in her 60s named Dr. Muller, greeted them warmly. She'd known their father professionally and had been honored to receive his papers. We've cataloged about half of the donation, Dr. Muller explained as she led them through the stacks. Your father's research notes have been invaluable for our linguistics collection. We've already had 3 doctoral students request access to his translation theory materials. She stopped in front of a section of shelves marked with their father's name. These are the processed boxes. The rest are in the sorting room, waiting for us to work through them. Can we see the unsorted boxes? Anna asked. Dr. Muller looked surprised. Of course, but may I ask why? If you're looking for something specific, I might be able to help. We have preliminary inventories. It's personal, Max said quickly. Family documents we may have accidentally included in the donation. We just want to make sure before everything is cataloged and sealed. Dr. Muller nodded, understanding. Family privacy is important. Follow me. She led them to a large room filled with cardboard boxes stacked on tables. These are the remaining items from the Bergman donation. Take your time. If you find anything you need to remove, just let me know and we'll update our records. After she left, Anna and Max stared at the boxes. There were at least 20 of them, each stuffed with papers, folders, and loose documents. This is going to take hours, Max said. Then we'd better start, Anna replied, pulling the first box toward her. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, sorting through years of their father's professional life. Lecture notes on Slavic linguistics, student essays marked up with red pen, correspondence with other academics, drafts of articles that were never published. It was like excavating their father's mind, layer by layer, and it was both fascinating and heartbreaking. They found syllabi from classes Anna remembered sitting in on as a child, found letters of recommendation their father had written for students who'd gone on to impressive careers, found photos of academic conferences and faculty dinners that chronicled the slow passage of years, but they found nothing that looked like corporate document, nothing about Richter International or Prague or any of the other companies Richter had mentioned. Max was beginning to think the whole thing was a wild goose chase when Anna opened a box near the bottom of the stack and found something odd. Max, look at this, she said, holding up a leather-bound journal. It was expensive, the kind of thing their father would never have bought for himself. The cover was embossed with initials Murphy in gold leaf, Martin Robert Bergman. Max took it and flipped through the pages. It was a diary of sorts, but not a traditional one. Instead of dated entries, it contained what looked like coded notes, strings of letters and numbers that made no immediate sense. Is this some kind of cipher? Max asked, squinting at the pages. Anna took the journal back and studied it more carefully. Wait, she said, her finger tracing one of the entries. These aren't random. Look at the pattern. She pulled out her phone and opened a notes app, starting to transcribe one of the sequences. After a few minutes of work, she sat back with a sharp intake of breath. It's a book cipher, she said. Dad taught me this when I was a kid. You use a specific book as the key, and the numbers correspond to page, line, and word positions. But which book? Max asked, gesturing at the boxes around them. Dad owned thousands of books. Anna flipped to the inside front cover of the journal. There, in her father's neat handwriting, was a single line in English. Seek truth where the words of wisdom dwell. His heart began to race. She knew exactly what book he meant. When she was 10, her father had given her a leather-bound edition of Plato's Republic. He'd inscribed it with those exact words. It had been her most treasured possession. She still had it on the bookshelf in her apartment. I need to go home, Anna said, standing up abruptly. I have the key. They checked out of the archives, thanking Dr. Muller and promising to return if they needed to review more materials. On the metro ride to Anna's apartment, neither of them spoke much. Max kept turning the journal over in his hands as if it might reveal its secrets through touch alone. Anna stared out the window, her mind racing. Her father had left her a map, a breadcrumb trail that only she could follow. He'd known she would find it eventually, had trusted that when the time came, she would understand what to do. Anna's apartment was a tiny studio in an older building, the kind of place that was affordable precisely because it was cramped and poorly maintained, but it was hers, and more importantly, it held her library. She went straight to the bookshelf and pulled out the worn copy of Plato's Republic. The spine was creased from years of reading, the pages marked with her own annotations from university courses. She sat at her small kitchen table with Max beside her and opened the journal to the first entry. Page 47, line 12, word 3, she read aloud. She turned to page 47 of the Republic and counted down to the 12th line, then across to the third word, justice. Max grabbed a pen and paper and started writing. The next sequence was page 112, line 5, word 8. Anna flipped pages and found the word is. They continued this way, slowly and methodically translating the cipher into plain text. It took nearly an hour to decode the first entry, and what they found made Anna's hands shake. Justice is not negotiable. The documents are protected. 3 copies exist, one with attorney Weber in Geneva, account number 4,472,891. Second copy in safety deposit box, Deutsche Bank, Unter den Linden, box 2247, key hidden in workshop, behind father's photographs. Third copy digital, encrypted. Password is mother's maiden name plus my birth year. Files uploaded to secure server. Access code in separate location. If you are reading this, I am gone. Use these wisely. Do not seek revenge. Seek accountability. The powerful must answer for their actions, but destruction for its own sake serves no one. Be better than I was. Be braver. Love always, Dad. Anna's vision blurred with tears. Her father had left detailed instructions, had created multiple fail-safes to ensure the documents would survive him. He'd planned for this moment, had known that someday his children might need to finish what he started. Max wrapped an arm around her shoulders and she leaned into him, the weight of their inheritance finally settling on both of them. What's the workshop he's talking about? Max asked quietly. We sold the house. Did the workshop go with it? Anna wiped her eyes and thought. The workshop wasn't at the house. Dad rented a space at that Maker Cope downtown, remember? Where he'd go to fix old radios and typewriters. She looked at Max. Do you think they kept his stuff when he died? Only one way to find out, Max said, already pulling out his phone to search for the co-op's contact information. Before he could dial, Anna's phone rang. The number was blocked. She answered hesitantly. Hello? Fräulein Bergman, a woman's voice said in German. My name is Katharina Weber. I'm an attorney in Geneva. Your father was my client. I've been waiting for your call for 2 years now. I was beginning to think you'd never find his instructions. Anna's mouth went dry. How did you know I'd call today? Because as of 8 o'clock this morning, someone attempted to access your father's documents from my office, Weber said crisply. They had forged credentials and a court order that wouldn't have fooled a first-year law student. This means someone knows the documents exist and is actively searching for them. Given the timing of their attempt, I suspect your recent interaction with Klaus Richter triggered something. You need to come to Geneva immediately. The documents are no longer safe where they are, and neither are you. Anna's apartment suddenly felt smaller, the walls pressing in as the implications of Weber's words sank in. Max was staring at her, his expression shifting from curiosity to alarm as he watched her face pale. Anna put the call on speaker. Who tried to access them? Anna asked, her voice steadier than she felt. I don't know their real identity, Weber replied. They presented themselves as representatives from an international compliance firm conducting an audit on behalf of German regulatory authorities. The paperwork was sophisticated enough to get them through building security, but my assistant noticed inconsistencies in the case numbers. When we refused access and asked them to verify their credentials through official channels, they left immediately. We have them on security footage, but I suspect the faces won't lead anywhere useful. These are professional. Did you call the police? Max interjected, leaning toward the phone. There was a pause. And who are you? This is my brother Max, Anna said. He's on this journey with me. I did not call the police, Weber said firmly. Your father was very explicit in his instructions. No police, no authorities, not unless absolutely necessary. He believed, and I'm inclined to agree, that some of the corruption documented in these files reaches into law enforcement and regulatory agencies. We can't know who to trust. That's why I'm calling you directly. You need to retrieve these documents before another attempt is made. Next time, they might not bother with forged papers. They might simply take them by force. How soon can you be here? Anna asked, already mentally calculating what she'd need to pack. I'm not coming to you, Weber correct. You need to come to Geneva, both of you if possible. The documents are in a secure facility, but I can only release them to Martin Bergman's designated heirs with proper identification and the access codes he provided. Can you be here by tomorrow? Anna looked at Max, who nodded despite the worry in his eyes. Yes, she said. We'll take the first flight we can get. Good. When you land, call this number. I'll arrange to meet you somewhere public first, to ensure you weren't followed. Weber paused, then added in a softer tone, Your father was a good man, Fräulein Bergman. He trusted me with something very dangerous, and I've honored that trust for 15 years. But I'm 67 years old, and I'd very much like to pass this burden to its rightful inheritors before I retire. These documents have cast a shadow over my practice for far too long. Why did you agree to keep them? Anna asked. Why risk your career, your safety for a client you barely knew? Because he convinced me it was the right thing to do, Weber said simply, and because I read the documents. What's in those files? What your father documented? It's evidence of systematic exploitation of vulnerable people across multiple countries. Pension theft, housing fraud, environmental violations that poisoned communities. Your father didn't just collect evidence of financial crimes. He collected evidence of human suffering caused by corporate greed. Someone needed to keep that record safe. I'm honored it was me. After they ended the call, Anna and Max sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, Max spoke. I need to skip my exam. I can't let you do this alone. No, Anna said firmly. You're not throwing away your education for this. One of us needs to maintain a normal life in case this goes sideways. Anna, this is insane, Max said, his voice rising. We're talking about forged documents, professional criminals, international travel to collect evidence that powerful people want destroyed. This isn't a normal situation. Nothing about this is maintaining a normal life. Exactly, Anna. Which is why you need to stay here and be the one person who isn't implicated if everything goes wrong. If I get arrested or worse, someone needs to be able to tell our story to make sure the documents reach the right people. She reached across the table and took his hand. I need you to be my failsafe, Max. Dad had 3 copies of everything for a reason. Redundancy. We need to be smart about this. Max looked like he wanted to argue, but he could see the determination in his sister's eyes. It's the same stubborn conviction that had defined their father. Fine, he said. But you're calling me every day. And if you don't check in, I'm going to the media with everything we know. Deal, Anna said. She stood and began pulling a small suitcase from her closet. Now help me figure out what one packs for becoming an international whistleblower. While Anna packed, Max looked up flights on his laptop. There's one leaving at 6 tomorrow morning, he said. It's expensive, but it gets you to Geneva by 9:30. I'll drive you to the airport. Book it, Anna said, pulling clothes from her dresser. She paused, holding one of her father's old sweaters that she'd kept after he died. Do you think he knew it would come to this? That we'd be the ones to finish his work? I think he hoped it wouldn't, Max said quietly. I think he hoped Richter and the others would make amends, that the documents could stay buried because justice had been served. But he prepared for the alternative because that's who he was. He always planned for the worst while hoping for the best. Anna folded the sweater and put it in her suitcase, a talisman against the unknown. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. She called Le Chateau Noir and quit her job, much to Philippa's dismay. She couldn't tell him the truth, so she invented a family emergency that required her to leave the country indefinitely. He was kind about it, offered to hold her position for 2 weeks in case things resolved quickly, but Anna knew she wouldn't be back. That chapter of her life was over. As evening fell, Anna's phone rang again. This time it was Richter. She let it go to voicemail. He called twice more before she finally answered on the 4th attempt. What do you want? She asked without preamble. Someone tried to access documents in Geneva this morning, Richter said. An attorney's office. I'm assuming that was one of your father's hiding places. How do you know about that? Anna demanded. Because the same people tried to access my company's archived files, Richter said. They're looking for anything that might lead them to your father's evidence. This isn't just about me anymore, Fräulein Bergman. Someone else is playing this game, and they're playing it much more aggressively than either of us anticipated. Who? Anna asked. Who else would want these documents? Think about it, Richter said. Your father documented crimes committed by multiple companies, multiple executives. Any one of them could have learned about the documents' existence through rumors or leaks over the years. Or perhaps they've always known but assumed they were destroyed when your father died. Your sudden interest, your questions, our very public interaction at the restaurant, it may have signaled that the documents are still in play. Anna felt a chill run through her. So you're saying I triggered this by confronting you? Possibly, Richter admitted. Or it was already in motion and we just accelerated the timeline. Either way, you need to understand that you're in danger now. Real danger. These aren't people who will be deterred by moral arguments or threats of exposure. They'll eliminate the problem, and right now you're the problem. Why are you telling? Anna asked. What do you care if I'm in danger? Richter was quiet for a moment. Because your father once told me that the measure of a man isn't how he treats his equals, but how he treats those who have no power over him. I failed that test with the people in Prague, with the others documented in those files. I'm not going to fail it with you. Whatever happens next, whatever you decide to do with those documents, I want you to survive it. The sincerity in his voice caught Anna off guard. How noble of you, she said, but the sarcasm felt forced. I can help you, Richter said. I have resources, security personnel, contacts in various countries. Let me send someone with you to Geneva. Someone to watch your back so you can keep tabs on me, so you can know exactly where the documents are. Anna shook her head even though he couldn't see it. No thank you, I'll take my chances on my own. Anna. Richter's voice took on an urgent tone. Pride is a luxury you can't afford right now. These people, whoever they are, they will not hesitate. You're 26 years old, a waitress with a linguistics degree. You're not trained for this kind of situation. And whose fault is that? Anna shot back. My father wouldn't have needed to collect these documents if people like you didn't exploit and destroy others for profit. You created this situation. Don't pretend to be my savior now. Fair point, Richter conceded. But regardless of how we got here, we're here, and I'm offering help. Real, practical help that might keep you alive. Anna thought about it, weighing her distrust of Richter against the very real danger Weber had described. Finally, she said, if I need help, I'll call you. But I'm not accepting protection from someone who's implicated in the very crimes I'm trying to expose. That's not help. That's conflict of interest. Then at least promise me you'll be careful, Richter said. Your father was a brilliant man, but he was playing a dangerous game. Don't underestimate the people on the other side of the board. I won't, Anna said and ended the call. That night, Anna barely slept. She lay in her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the city outside her window. Somewhere out there were people who wanted to silence her, who saw her as an obstacle to be removed. The thought should have terrified her, and part of it did, but another part of her felt strangely alive, energized by a sense of purpose she hadn't experienced since her father's death. She was finally doing something that mattered, something that might make a real difference in the world. At 4 in the morning, Max knocked on her door with coffee and pastries from the all-night bakery down the street. They ate in companionable silence, neither of them acknowledging that this might be the last normal moment they'd share for a long time. At 5, they loaded Anna's suitcase into Max's battered car and drove through the empty pre-dawn streets to the airport. At the departure terminal, Max pulled her into a tight embrace. "Come back safe," he whispered into her hair. "Dad would want you to come back safe." "I will," Anna promised, though she had no idea if she could keep that promise. She pulled back and looked at her brother's face, memorizing every detail. "If something happens, if I don't come back, finish medical school, live a good life, don't let this consume you the way it consumed Dad." "Nothing's going to happen," Max said firmly. "You're going to get the documents, figure out what to do with them, and come home, and then we're going to find a way to move forward from all of this." Anna nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She turned and walked towards security, forcing herself not to look back. If she looked back, she might lose her nerve. The flight to Geneva was uneventful, which somehow made Anna more nervous. She'd half expected someone to stop her at security to find armed men waiting at the gate, but nothing happened. She boarded the plane with the other passengers, most of them business travelers who typed frantically on laptops or slept with the practiced efficiency of people who spent half their lives in the air. Anna sat by the window and watched the sun rise over the Alps, the mountains glowing pink and gold in the early morning light. She thought about her father making this same journey 15 years ago, carrying documents that could destroy powerful men, trusting a lawyer he'd probably never met in person to keep them safe. What had he felt? Fear? Determination? A sense of righteous purpose? Or had he simply felt exhausted by the weight of knowing too much, of carrying secrets that burned like hot coal? The plane landed at Geneva Airport at 9:45, 15 minutes late due to headwinds. Anna deplaned with her small carry-on, moving through the terminal with the crowd. She'd just cleared customs when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Swiss number. "Red Scarf, Caf Lehman, 2nd floor, near the windows. Come alone." Anna found the Café Isley, a small establishment overlooking the tarmac where planes taxied in the morning light. She spotted Weber immediately, a elegant woman with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a burgundy suit and the promised red scarf. She sat at a corner table with clear sightlines to all approaches, a half-finished espresso in front of her. Anna approached slowly, very aware of the other patrons in the cafe, wondering if any of them were watching her. "Fräulein Bergman," Weber said as Anna reached the table, her German carrying a distinct Swiss accent. "Please, sit. You look exhausted." "I am," Anna admitted, sinking into the chair across from her. "I didn't sleep much." "Understandable." Weber signaled the waiter and ordered another espresso for Anna without asking. While they waited for it to arrive, she studied Anna with sharp, assessing eyes. "You look like your father," she said finally. "Not in features, but in bearing. He had that same quality of quiet determination that could be mistaken for stubbornness." "He was stubborn," Anna said with a small smile. "It was one of his defining characteristics. It's what kept him alive," Weber said, "and what ultimately killed him, I suspect. The stress of carrying those documents, of constantly looking over his shoulder, it takes a toll." She paused as the waiter delivered Anna's espresso. After he left, she continued, "I need to know if you're prepared for what comes next. Once you take possession of those documents, you become the keeper of very dangerous information. There's no going back from that." "I understand," Anna said, though she wasn't entirely sure she did. "Do you?" Weber leaned forward. "Your father came to me in 2009. He had just walked away from a lucrative consulting job because his conscience wouldn't allow him to participate in fraud. He was scared, paranoid even. He'd taken documents he shouldn't have taken, copied emails and contracts and internal memos. He knew that if the wrong people found out, he'd be in serious danger. But he also knew that if he did nothing, those documents would die with him and all the suffering they documented would go unanswered." Anna sipped her espresso, the bitter liquid grounding her. "What did you advise him to do?" "I told him he was insane," Weber said bluntly. "I told him to destroy the documents, to forget everything he'd seen, to protect himself and his family. He refused. He said that silence in the face of injustice is complicity and he wouldn't be complicit. So I agreed to help him. I set up secure storage for the documents, helped him create the access protocols, and promised that if anything happened to him, I would ensure they reached his heirs." She took a sip of her own espresso. "I've kept that promise. Now I need to know if you're going to honor his intentions or if you're going to make this nightmare go away by destroying what he preserved." Anna thought about it, really thought about it. The easiest thing would be to take the documents and burn them to eliminate the danger and go back to her simple life. But could she live with herself knowing she'd destroyed evidence of crimes that had harmed real people? Could she ignore her father's life work, the principle he'd died defending? "I'm going to use them," she said quietly. "I'm going to do what my father intended. I'm going to hold those people accountable." Weber nodded, something like relief crossing her face. "Good, then let's go get him." She stood and dropped cash on the table for the espressos. "Stay close to me and act natural. If you see anything suspicious, anyone following us, you tell me immediately." They took a taxi into the city center, Weber giving directions in French to the driver. Geneva was beautiful in the morning light, the lake sparkling, the famous jet d'eau sending its plume of water high into the air. They passed elegant old buildings and modern glass structures, the wealth of the city evident in every pristine street and manicured park. The taxi dropped them at a nondescript office building in the financial district. "My firm is on the 6th floor," Weber explained as they entered the building, "but the documents aren't here. They're in a private vault facility 2 blocks away. We're just picking up the access credentials." She led Anna through a marble lobby to a bank of elevators. Inside the elevator, she lowered her voice. "I had my assistant monitor building security all morning. No suspicious activity. No one asking about you. We may actually be in the clear." The elevator doors opened on the 6th floor, revealing a tasteful reception area with Weber and Associates etched in gold letters on a glass wall. A young woman at the reception desk greeted Weber warmly and handed her a manila envelope. "Everything you requested, Frau Weber." "Thank you, Heidi," Weber said, tucking the envelope into her handbag. "Hold my call for the rest of the day. I'll be unreachable." They left the building and walked 2 blocks through the busy Geneva streets. Anna kept glancing over her shoulder, looking for anyone who might be following them, but the crowds were dense and anonymous. Weber moved with confident familiarity, clearly knowing every camera position and sightline. They arrived at a modern glass building with no external sign. Weber pressed a buzzer at an unmarked door, and a moment later they were admitted to a small, sterile lobby. A security guard sat behind bulletproof glass, his expression professionally neutral. Weber presented identification and filled out a form. The guard checked everything carefully, then buzzed them through another door into a corridor lined with heavy vault doors. They stopped at door 47. Weber produced a key from the manila envelope and inserted it into one lock, then gestured to Anna. "You'll need the access code your father left you. 6 digits. Anna pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app where she'd transcribed the cipher from her father's journal. Her mother's maiden name was Hoffmann plus his birth year, 1951. She typed the numbers into the keypad. 519511. There was a heavy mechanical sound, and the vault door clicked open. Inside the small room was a single filing box on a shelf, kind you might use to store old tax returns or family photos. It looked so ordinary, so innocuous. Weber lifted it down and set it on a small table in the center of the room. "This is it," she said. 15 years of safekeeping. Your inheritance." Anna opened the box with trembling hand. Inside were files, dozens of them, each neatly labeled with company names and dates. Richter International Prague Acquisition, 2009. Steinman Properties Berlin Tenant Displacement, 2007. Vogel Industries Environmental Violations, 2008. Each file was thick with printouts of emails, copies of contracts, internal memos that were never meant to see daylight. Anna pulled out the Richter file and opened it. The first page was a contract in German and Czech, side by side. The German version was subtly different from the Czech. The protections her father had mentioned mysteriously absent in the translation. Anna whispered, "It's all here. Everything." "Not everything," Weber corrected. "This is just the hard copy archive. Your father also created digital copies, encrypted and stored on secure servers. The access information for those is in a separate envelope at the bottom of the box." He was very thorough. Anna found the envelope and opened it. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note from her father. The note was dated a week before he died. "My dearest Anna and Max, if you're reading this, I am gone. I'm sorry I couldn't explain all of this while I was alive. I was trying to protect you from the weight of it, but now it's yours to bear. These documents represent the suffering of hundreds of people, maybe thousands. They deserve justice. Use these wisely. Don't let anger or revenge guide you. Let compassion guide. Remember that even the powerful are human, capable of change. Give them the chance to do better before you destroy them. But if they refuse that chance, then show no mercy. The truth is your weapon. Use it well. All my love, Dad." Anna's vision blurred with tears. She read the note twice, then tucked it carefully into her pocket. Weber was watching her with a mixture of sympathy and impatience. "What do you want to do?" she asked. "Take the files with you? Leave them here? I can maintain the vault indefinitely, but given this morning's attempted breach, I don't know how safe any location truly is anymore." "I need to take them," Anna said. "But not back to Germany. Not yet," she thought quickly, her mind racing through options. "Is there somewhere in Geneva I can stay? Somewhere I can go through these files properly, figure out what's most important, what needs to be acted on first?" Weber nodded. "I have a small apartment I keep for visiting clients. It's secure, registered under a corporate entity. No connection to my firm or to you. You can stay there for a few days. But Anna, you can't hide forever. Eventually you'll need to decide what you're going to do with this information." "I know," Anna said. She closed the file box and lifted it. It was heavier than she expected, the weight of 15 years of secrets and lies. "Can we go now? I want to start reading." They returned the key to the guard and left the vault facility. Weber hailed another taxi and gave an address in a residential neighborhood. They drove in silence, Anna clutching the box on her lap like a child with a precious toy. The apartment was in a quiet building near the lake, a furnished one-bedroom that was comfortable without being luxurious. Weber gave Anna the keys and a phone number written on a card. "This line reaches me directly," Weber said. "If you need anything, if there's trouble, you call immediately." "I mean that, Anna, don't try to be a hero. These people play for keeps. She paused at the door. Your father was a good man who tried to do the right thing. Don't let his death be meaningless. But also don't throw your life away for his crusade. Find a balance. After Weber left, Anna locked the door and set the box on the dining table. For a long moment, she just stared at it. This Pandora's box that her father had opened and she was now reopening. Anna spent the next 2 days buried in documents, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and the sandwiches she had delivered from a nearby cafe. She spread the files across the apartment floor, creating a physical map of corporate corruption that sprawled across multiple countries and industries. Each file told a story of human suffering masked by legal language and business jargon. The Richter Prague file documented not just the property acquisition but the displacement of 43 elderly residents, many of whom had lived in the building for decades. Her father had tracked what happened to them afterward. 7 had died within the first year of displacement, unable to cope with the stress of relocation and the loss of their community. The Steinman Properties file was worse. It detailed a systematic scheme to force rent-controlled tenants out of buildings in Berlin through manufactured maintenance harassment by hired thugs posing as security guards, and deliberate neglect of repairs that made apartments uninhabitable. The internal emails were damning. One from a Steinman executive read, "These people are parasites living off our property for pennies. Make them so uncomfortable they leave voluntarily and we avoid the legal complications of formal eviction." The Vogel Industries. Environmental violations documented the deliberate dumping of chemical waste into a river that supplied drinking water to 3 small towns. The company had known for years that their practices were causing elevated cancer rates in those communities, but they'd calculated that the cost of proper disposal exceeded the likely cost of any legal settlement. They'd chosen profit over human life, documenting their decision in quarterly reports that Anna now held in her hand. By the end of the second day, Anna felt physically ill. She'd read hundreds of pages documenting cruelty, greed, and calculated harm, but she'd also found something unexpected. In several of the files tucked between official documents were handwritten notes from her father. They weren't angry screeds or bitter denunciations. They were careful, thoughtful analyses of what would constitute real accountability for each situation. For the Prague building, he'd calculated fair market value compensation for each displaced resident, plus relocation costs and emotional damage. For Steinman Properties, he'd outlined a plan for tenant ownership cooperatives that would restore housing security while still providing reasonable returns to investors. For Vogel Industries, he'd proposed a comprehensive cleanup plan and a health fund for affected communities. Her father hadn't been interested in punishment for its own sake. He'd been interested in restoration and making victims whole. His notes showed a mind that believed in redemption, that thought even those who had committed terrible acts could choose to do better. Anna found this both inspiring and frustrating. Part of her wanted simple revenge, wanted to see these people destroyed as they had destroyed others. But her father's voice came through in every careful notation, every proposed solution. Be better than I was. Be braver. On the 3rd morning, Anna's phone rang. It was Max. She'd been texting him daily updates, but had avoided calls, afraid her voice would betray how overwhelmed she felt. She answered, trying to sound more confident than she was. "How are you holding up?" Max asked without preamble. "I'm okay," Anna lied. "I've been going through everything." "Max, it's worse than we thought. The scale of it, the number of people hurt." "I figured." Max's voice was tight with tension. "Anna, we have a problem. Someone came to the apartment yesterday. They knocked on the door claiming to be from the university, said they needed to verify some information about Dad's archived papers. I didn't answer. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 men in suits. They waited for 20 minutes, then left. But Anna, they didn't go to any other apartments. They came specifically to yours." Anna felt her stomach drop. "How did they find you?" "I don't know. Maybe they traced you from the restaurant, from employment records. Maybe they've been watching you longer than we thought." Max took a breath. "I called the university. There's no audit of Dad's papers. No one from the university sent anyone to your apartment. These were the same people who tried to get into Weber's office, I'm sure of it." "Did you call the police?" Anna asked, though she already knew the answer. "And tell them what? That I think someone might be looking for documents related to corporate crimes from 15 years ago? Without evidence, without being able to explain why anyone would care? I'd sound insane." Max paused. "Anna, you need to finish whatever you're doing and come home. Or don't come home. Maybe you should stay there." Disappeared. These people are escalating." Before Anna could respond, there was a knock on the apartment door. Her blood turned to ice. She hadn't ordered food. Weber wasn't supposed to visit unless Anna called first. Nobody knew she was here. She whispered into the phone, "Someone's at the door." "Don't answer it," Max said urgently. "Don't make a sound. Maybe they'll think no one's home." The knock came again, more insistent. Then a voice, speaking German. "Fräulein Bergman, I know you're in there. Please, I need to speak with you. It's about your father." Anna recognized the voice. It was Klaus Richter. She felt a wave of anger wash over her. How had he found her? Had he been tracking her all along, despite his protestations of wanting to help? She strode to the door and yanked it open, her phone still pressed to her ear. Max could hear everything. Richter stood in the hallway and he looked terrible. His usual immaculate appearance was disheveled, his suit wrinkled, his face drawn with exhaustion. Behind him stood Friedrich, his nervous assistant, looking even worse. Both men appeared to have not slept in days. "How did you find me?" Anna demanded. May I come in? Richter asked. This isn't a conversation for hallways. No, whatever you have to say, you can say it right there. Anna kept one hand on the door, ready to slam it shut if necessary. Richter glanced at Friedrich, then back at Anna. There's been a development, a very serious development. One of the other executives documented in your father's files, Hermann Vogel of Vogel Industries, he's dead, murdered 2 nights ago in his home outside Munich. Professional hit, made to look like a robbery. Police are investigating it as such, but I know better. Anna felt her heart hammering. You think it's related to the documents? I don't think. I know, Richter said. Vogel called me 3 days ago, panicking. He said someone had contacted him, told him they had evidence of the river contamination from 2008, told him they wanted 10 million euros or the evidence goes public. He refused to pay. He thought it was a bluff. He was wrong. Richter looked at Anna intently. They killed him as a message to the rest of us. Pay or die. Anna's mind raced. So someone has another copy of the documents. Someone is using them for blackmail and murder. Not exactly, Richter said. Vogel told me the person who contacted him claimed to have only partial documentation, enough to destroy him but not enough to take down everyone. They were fishing, trying to figure out if more evidence existed and where it might be. When Vogel refused to pay, they eliminated him and are now presumably moving on to the next target. Which would be you, Anna said. Which would be me, Richter confirmed. Except I'm not going to pay and I'm not going to be a passive victim. I need to see your father's complete files. I need to know exactly what evidence exists so I can understand what we're dealing. And Anna, I need to know if you've been contacted by the— No one has contacted me, Anna said, and I'm not showing you anything. For all I know, you're the one behind this. Maybe you decided that killing off everyone else who's implicated would eliminate your competition and silence witnesses at the same time. Richter's jaw tightened. If I wanted you dead, Fräulein Bergman, you would be dead. I have the resources and the connections. But that's not who I am, despite what you think of me. He pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. This is what I found on my office desk this morning. It was a printout of a page from the Richter file. The same contract Anna had been studying days ago. Underneath it was a handwritten note in German. 10 million euros by Friday or you're next. You have something they want. They know you have the complete archive. That makes you the biggest threat and the most valuable target. Anna felt the walls closing in. Max was still on the phone, silent but listening. She looked at Richter, trying to read his expression, trying to determine if this was an elaborate manipulation or if he was telling the truth. Who would want to use the documents this way? Who benefits from blackmail and murder? Someone who wants money and doesn't care about justice. Someone who found out the documents existed and saw an opportunity. It could be someone from one of the companies, a disgruntled employee with partial access to files. It could be someone from law enforcement or regulatory agencies who got wind of your father's investigation. It could even be someone close to your father who knew about the documents and waited until after his death to exploit them. Anna thought about the attempted breach at Weber's office, the men who'd come to her apartment looking for Max, the systematic way someone was working through the list of implicated executives. This wasn't random. This was planned, professional. These people had been planning this for a while, she said slowly. They probably tried to find the documents after my father died, couldn't locate them, and then waited. When I started asking questions, when I confronted you at the restaurant, it signaled that the documents were in play again. Richter nodded, which means every move you make, every person you contact, you're being watched. They're waiting for you to lead them to the complete archive. And once they have it, you become a liability they'll eliminate. The apartment suddenly felt like a trap. Anna looked at the files spread across the floor, her father's life work and death sentence. I need to think, she said. I need to figure out what to do. You need to give me the files, Richter said. Let me handle this. I have security, I have lawyers, I have resources you don't have. Let me protect you while we figure out who's behind this so you can destroy the evidence, so you can make this all go away. Anna shook her head. I'm not that naive. Then what's your plan? Richter demanded, his frustration showing. Wait here until they find you. Go to the police who might be compromised. Go to the media and put a spotlight on yourself that ensures you'll never be safe again. Your father played this game alone for 15 years, and the stress of it killed him. You've been playing it for 3 days and you're already in over your head. Anna knew he was right, hated that he was right. She looked down at her phone where Max was still silently listening. Then she made a decision. I'm going public, she said. All of it. Every file, every document, every piece of evidence. I'm going to give it to journalists, to prosecutors, to anyone who will listen. If it's all out in the open, there's no reason to kill me or blackmail anyone. The leverage disappears once the information is public. Richter's expression shifted from frustration to something that looked almost like respect. That's incredibly brave and incredibly stupid, he said. The moment you go public, you become the face of this story. Every corporation named in those files will come after you with their legal departments. You'll spend years in court, possibly decades. Your life will be consumed by this. Better than being dead, Anna said. And better than living with the knowledge that I could have done something and chose not to. She looked at him directly. My father gave you a chance to make things right quietly. You took it halfway. Now everyone gets the same chance, but publicly. No more private deals, no more hush money disguised as scholarships, just accountability. Richter was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. If you're going to do this, do it smart. Don't just dump everything online where it can be discredited or dismissed. Build a coalition. Find journalists who specialize in investigative reporting. Prosecutors in multiple jurisdictions who can act simultaneously. Advocacy groups who can mobilize public pressure. Make it impossible to bury. He pulled out his phone. I know people People who would be very interested in what's in those files. Why would you help me destroy you? Anna asked suspiciously. Because I'm already destroyed, Richter said quietly. The moment Vogel was killed, the moment someone started using these documents for murder and blackmail, this stopped being about protecting myself. Now it's about survival. The only way any of us survive is if the truth comes out and the blackmailers lose their leverage. He looked at her with those ice blue eyes. Because your father was right about me, I am a robber baron. I have been for 30 years. Maybe it's time I face the consequences of that. Anna studied him, trying to see past the polished exterior to the man underneath. She thought about her father's notes, his belief in redemption and accountability. Then prove it, she said. Help me do this right. But I'm leading this, not you. These are my father's documents, my father's legacy. I'm the one who decides how this story gets told. Agreed, Richter said. Friedrich, get the secure laptop from the car. We need to start making calls. As Friedrich hurried away, Richter stepped into the apartment. Anna let him, though every instinct screamed not to trust him. He looked at the files spread across the floor, years of his crimes laid out in neat rows. He knelt down and picked up one of his father's handwritten notes. This, he said, holding it up, this analysis of how to make the Prague situation right. Did your father write these for all of them? Yes, Anna said. He wasn't interested in destroying people. He wanted them to fix what they'd broken. Richter read the note, his expression unreadable. He calculated compensation down to the individual resident. He found addresses for where they'd relocated, tracked their health outcome. This is more than documentation. This is a restoration plan. He looked up at Anna. Your father could have sold these documents to a tabloid and made a fortune. Instead, he used them as leverage to force people to do better. He really believed we were capable of redemption. Were you? Anna asked. Are you? I don't know, Richter admitted. I paid the compensation. I funded the scholarship, but I didn't change my business practices fundamentally. I just got better at hiding them, at staying within legal boundaries while still maximizing profit at others' expense. He set the note down carefully. Maybe that's as good as people like me get, or maybe I was never pushed hard enough to really change. You're about to be, Anna said. When this goes public, you won't have the option of half measures anymore. Friedrich returned with a sleek laptop and set it up on the dining table. Over the next hour, Richter made calls. He contacted journalists at major international publications, prosecutors he knew from various business dealings, and even a few former colleagues who had left the corporate world for advocacy work. His conversations were frank, almost brutally honest. He told them about Vogel's murder, about the blackmail threats, about the existence of comprehensive documentation of corporate crimes spanning 15 years. He told them that Anna Bergman, daughter of the man who'd collected the evidence, was prepared to release everything simultaneously to prevent any single entity from burying the story. By noon, they had commitments from 3 major newspapers, 2 television networks, and prosecutors' offices in 4 countries. They had lawyers willing to work pro bono to protect Anna from retaliation, and advocacy groups ready to mobilize around the revelations. The machine was in motion. Anna set a deadline for release, 72 hours from now. It would give the journalists time to verify and contextualize the documents, give the prosecutors time to prepare their cases, and give Anna time to make copies and ensure nothing could be suppressed. As they worked, Anna found herself watching Richter. He moved with the same authority he'd shown in the restaurant, but there was something different now. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a grim determination. He was a man who'd accepted his fate and decided to face it on his own terms. At one point, he caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. What is it? I'm trying to figure out if you're a good person doing bad things or a bad person doing good things, Anna said. Does it matter? Richter asked. In the end, we're all just people making choices and living with the consequences. The labels are less important than the actions. It mattered to my father, Anna said. He believed people could choose to be better, and that belief got him killed, Richter pointed out. Not directly, but the stress and fear of carrying these documents, of constantly watching his back, it destroyed his health. Your father sacrificed himself for his principles. I'm not sure that's admirable or tragic. Maybe it's both. Anna thought about her father's last note, his instructions to give people a chance to do better before destroying them. She reached into the Richter file and pulled out a document she hadn't shown anyone yet. It was tucked in the very back, separate from the rest. She handed it to Richter without a word. He unfolded it slowly, and as he read, his face went completely white. It was a birth certificate. Not from the Prague files, not related to the business dealings at all. It was dated 1962 and listed a baby boy born in a small town outside Berlin. The mother's name was Anneliese Richter. The father's name was listed as unknown. Paperwork attached to the certificate showed the child had been adopted 3 days after birth. The adopting parents were listed as Wilhelm and Greta Richter. That's you, Anna said quietly. Your birth certificate. My father found it in a safety deposit box belonging to your parents after your father died. He was doing an estate translation job. He came across it by accident and realized something you apparently never knew. Wilhelm Richter wasn't your father, he was your adoptive father. Your biological mother was his sister, and she was only 16 when she had you. The family covered it up by having Wilhelm and Greta adopt you immediately and telling everyone you were theirs. Richter stared at the document, his hands trembling. This can't be real. My parents would have told me. They didn't though, did they? Anna said. Your father built his empire claiming you were his biological heir, the continuation of the Richter dynasty. But you were really his nephew, born of scandal and shame, adopted to preserve the family reputation. My father found this and kept it, not as blackmail but as insurance. He wanted you to know that your entire identity was built on a lie, just like your business empire. He thought if you knew, you might understand what it feels like to have your truth stolen from you. Richter set the certificate down with shaking hands. His face had gone from white to an unhealthy gray. Why didn't he tell me? Why keep this secret? Because he died before he could, Anna said. Or maybe because he knew this truth was too devastating to share except as a last resort. But I'm sharing it now because I want you to understand something. Everyone in these files, every person you and the others harmed, they have secrets too. They have complicated histories and hidden pain. They're not just collateral damage in your business deals. They're human beings with the same complexity you have. That's what my father was trying to. For a long moment, Richter couldn't speak. When he finally found his voice, it was raw, broken. My entire life was a lie. Everything I thought I knew about who I was, where I came from. Now you know how those people in Prague felt, Anna said without cruelty, just stating fact. When you took their homes, you didn't just take buildings. You took their identities, their sense of belonging, their understanding of their place in the world. That's what you need to answer for. Not just the financial harm, but the existential harm. The secret had indeed left Klaus Richter speechless, but not forever. After several minutes of stunned silence, he looked at Anna with new eyes. Are you going to release this birth certificate? No, Anna said, that's not mine to share. It's personal history, not public crime. But I needed you to see it. I needed you to understand that truth matters even when it's painful, especially when it's painful. Richter folded the certificate carefully and put it in his pocket. Thank you, he said quietly, for showing me this privately, for not using it as a weapon. You're more merciful than I deserve. I'm more merciful than my father was, Anna said. He would have made you sit with this knowledge for years the way he did. I don't have the patience for that. The next 3 days were a whirl. Anna worked with journalists to verify documents, walked prosecutors through the evidence chain, and gave interviews explaining her father's work. The story broke simultaneously across multiple platforms on a Thursday morning. By noon, it was the top story on every major news outlet. Corporate crime spanning 15 years exposed, an unprecedented document dump. Daughter of deceased whistleblower completes father's mission. The fallout was immediate and severe. Several executives were arrested within hours. Corporate stock values plummeted. Victims' advocacy groups began organizing class action lawsuits. The European Union announced investigations into all companies named in the documents, and Klaus Richter, standing before a phalanx of cameras outside his corporate headquarters, did something that shocked the business world. He confessed. Everything in these documents about Richter International is true, he said, his voice steady despite the camera flashes. I personally authorized actions that harmed innocent people. I prioritized profit over human welfare. I exploited legal loopholes to avoid accountability. I am guilty of every allegation made against me. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. But I am also committing here and now to make full restitution to every person harmed by my company's action. We will compensate the Prague residents and their families. We will establish oversight mechanisms to prevent future abuses. And I will personally cooperate with any and all investigations into my conduct. The confession was unprecedented. Other executives tried to deny, to obfuscate, to hide behind lawyers. Richter stood in the light and accepted the consequences. The business press called it career suicide. Anna called it redemption, or at least the beginning of it. 6 months later, Anna sat in a small cafe in Geneva, sipping coffee and watching the lake. The legal proceedings were ongoing. Several executives had been convicted. Others were still fighting charges. Richter had stepped down as CEO of his company and was spending his days working with the victim compensation fund he'd established. He'd lost most of his fortune, but not his freedom. The prosecutors had given him immunity in exchange for his testimony against the others. Anna had used the €1,000 tip Richter left her that night at Le Chateau Noir to start a foundation in her father's name, the Professor Martin Bergman Foundation for Corporate Accountability. It helped whistleblowers, supported investigative journalists, and provided legal assistance to people harmed by corporate malfeasance. Max had finished his medical school exams and was planning to specialize in public health, treating the kinds of communities that had been poisoned by companies like Vogel Industries. Her phone buzzed with a text from Richter. May I join you? Anna looked up and saw him standing at the cafe entrance, looking older and somehow more genuine than he had in his tailored suits. She nodded, and he sat down across from her. They'd met several times over the past months, usually to coordinate on restitution efforts. But this felt different, more personal. I wanted to give you this, Richter said, sliding an envelope across the table. It's the final compensation report for the Prague residents. Everyone has been paid in full, including the families of those who died. We also established a memorial fund in their honor. He paused. Your father's plan was perfect. We followed it exactly. He would be proud, Anna said, taking the envelope. Would he? Richter asked. I'm not sure. I did the minimum required to avoid prison and to salvage what's left of my conscience. I'm not sure that qualifies as redemption. You're still here, Anna said. You're still trying. That counts for something. She looked at him seriously. My father believed that people could change. I'm starting to believe it too. Not because change is easy or because it erases what came before, but because the alternative is giving up on humanity entirely. Richter smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. You really are your father's daughter. That same stubborn faith in people who probably don't deserve it. They talked for another hour about the ongoing investigations, about the foundation, about the future. When they parted, Anna felt a sense of closure that had been absent since her father's death. She had finished his work, not perfectly, but completely. The documents were public, the victims were being compensated, and the powerful were being held accountable. It wasn't justice in its purest form, but it was progress. It was real. It mattered. As Anna walked back to her hotel, she thought about that night in the restaurant, about the moment when Richter had mocked her in German and she'd chosen to respond instead of staying silent. That single decision had set everything in motion. A casual remark had indeed unraveled a web of lies and secrets, and in doing so, it had revealed something important, that ordinary people doing brave things could change the world, one uncomfortable truth at a time. Her father had started the story with stolen documents and a moral ultimatum. Anna had finished it with transparency and tenacity, and somewhere she hoped Martin Bergman was watching, proud of the daughter who had been brave enough to carry his torch into the light.